Miami was once the crown jewel of American tourism, a paradise where dreams came to life under the neon lights and palm trees. Now, visitors are fleeing, and the reasons why reveal something darker about what we've allowed this city to become. The statistics are shocking. Hotel occupancy rates have dropped 23% in just 2 years, while tourist complaints have tripled. But why is everyone suddenly abandoning the magic city? What happened to the place that once promised endless summer and limitless possibility? The answer is more disturbing than you might think, and by the end of this story, you'll understand why Miami is no longer the destination it pretends to be. Once upon a time, Miami meant something. It meant Art Deco buildings glowing pink and turquoise against an impossibly blue sky. It meant cultural fusion, where Latin rhythms mixed with American ambition to create something entirely new. Families saved for years to visit South Beach, where the sand felt like powdered sugar and the ocean stretched toward infinity. Business travelers arrived for conferences and stayed for the energy, the possibility, the feeling that anything could happen here. Miami wasn't just a city, it was a promise that you could reinvent yourself, that glamour was within reach, that paradise existed if you knew where to look. Celebrities walked the same streets as tourists, and everyone felt like they were part of something special. The city hummed with an electric current of opportunity and excitement. But something shifted. Slowly at first, then all at once, Miami began to change. The magic started to fade, replaced by something harder, more cynical, more transactional. Visitors who had dreamed of their Miami vacation for months found themselves disappointed, frustrated, even angry. They returned home with stories not of paradise found, but of paradise lost. And they told everyone they knew, "Don't go to Miami, not anymore." The first crack in Miami's tourism foundation appeared in the most basic way possible: the cost. Miami has transformed into one of the most expensive cities in America, and tourists are drowning in bills before they even reach the beach. Hotel rooms that once cost $150 now demand $400, $500, even $600 per night for the same basic accommodations. Parking fees that were already steep have become predatory, with some hotels charging $60 per day just to keep your car in their lot. Want breakfast? That'll be $35 for eggs and coffee. Need an umbrella on the beach? $50 for the day, plus a mandatory tip. Every single interaction in Miami now comes with a price tag that makes visitors wince. But it's not just the high prices that sting. It's the feeling that you're being hunted, that every business sees you as prey to be exploited before you escape. Restaurants add automatic 25% service charges, then still expect additional tips on top. Clubs demand minimum spends of thousands of dollars for basic tables. Even getting to your hotel from the airport costs $60 in an Uber, and that's if you're lucky enough to avoid surge pricing. Tourists report spending 3 to 4 times what they budgeted, turning dream vacations into financial nightmares. Families who saved carefully find themselves checking their bank accounts with growing dread, realizing that a week in Miami costs more than a month in Europe. The promise of affordable paradise has become a joke, and visitors feel foolish for believing it. The pricing crisis reveals something deeper about Miami's soul. The city has decided that luxury means exclusion, that prestige requires making ordinary people feel unwelcome. This wasn't always the case. Miami once prided itself on being accessible, on offering glamour to everyone willing to make the trip. Now it caters exclusively to the ultra-wealthy, treating middle-class tourists like inconveniences to be tolerated and overcharged. The warmth is gone, replaced by cold calculation. When tourists realize they're not valued, they don't come back. They warn their friends, they leave negative reviews, they find other beaches, other cities, other dreams. The second reason tourists are fleeing cuts even deeper: safety. Miami's crime rate has surged, and visitors no longer feel secure walking the streets that once promised carefree adventure. Carjackings have increased 41% in the past 18 months. Armed robberies target tourists specifically, with criminals watching airport shuttles and hotel entrances, identifying out-of-town license plates and rental cars. Visitors who came seeking sun and relaxation instead find themselves constantly vigilant, clutching their belongings, avoiding certain neighborhoods they read about in panicked online forums. The beach walk, once a pleasant evening stroll, now empties after dark. Tourists huddle in well-lit areas, afraid to explore, afraid to experience the city they paid so much to visit. But here's what makes the safety crisis truly heartbreaking. Miami had solved this problem before. In the 1990s and early 2000s, the city worked hard to rebuild its reputation, to prove it was safe for families, for solo travelers, for anyone seeking paradise. That work succeeded. Tourism boomed. Then complacency set in. Budget cuts reduced police presence in tourist areas. Visible security disappeared. Criminal elements noticed, and they moved back in. Now, vacation review sites overflow with warnings and horror stories. A couple from Ohio describes being robbed at gunpoint outside a restaurant in Winewood. A family from Canada watched their rental car get stolen from a shopping center parking lot in broad daylight. A woman traveling alone was followed from her hotel to the beach and only escaped by running into a crowded area and screaming for help. These aren't isolated incidents anymore. They're patterns. They're trends. They're reasons people choose Charleston, Savannah, Austin, anywhere but Miami. Because no amount of beautiful weather compensates for fear. No beach is worth feeling unsafe. And Miami's response has been inadequate, defensive, dismissive. Officials insist crime is down when tourists know better from lived experience. The gap between official statistics and visitor reality has become a chasm of distrust. The third reason tourists are abandoning Miami speaks to an even more fundamental betrayal. Traffic and infrastructure have collapsed into chaos. Imagine spending $5,000 on a vacation, then spending 3 hours of every day sitting in gridlocked traffic, breathing exhaust fumes, watching your precious time evaporate. Miami's roads were never designed for the population explosion the city has experienced. What used to be a 20-minute drive from South Beach to Coconut Grove now takes 90 minutes during rush hour, which apparently lasts from 7 in the morning until 8 at night. Tourists rent cars expecting freedom to explore and instead find themselves trapped in endless traffic nightmares. Public transportation remains embarrassingly limited for a major metropolitan area. The metro rail doesn't reach the beach. Bus routes confuse even locals. Tourists trying to use public transit give up in frustration and order expensive Ubers, only to sit in the same traffic watching the meter climb. Meanwhile, construction projects that promise to improve mobility have stretched on for years, turning major streets into obstacle courses of orange cones and detours. The chaos isn't temporary, it's the new normal. Visitors realize quickly that Miami doesn't value their time, doesn't care about their experience, doesn't respect their investment in visiting the city. The infrastructure decay extends beyond roads. Miami Beach floods during high tide now, a phenomenon called sunny day flooding that sounds quaint until you're wading through knee-deep water trying to reach your hotel. Streets become rivers, businesses close. The city shrugs and says, this is just how things are now, as if accepting defeat against the ocean is acceptable for a coastal tourism economy. Tourists who researched Miami's beautiful beaches didn't research whether those beaches would be accessible, or whether reaching them would require swimming through flooded streets. The disconnect between marketing and reality has become almost satirical. The fourth reason cuts to Miami's cultural heart. The authenticity is gone. Miami sold itself as a cultural melting pot, a place where Cuban, Caribbean, South American, and American influences created something unique and vibrant. That cultural richness still exists in pockets, in neighborhoods tourists never see, because they've been steered towards sanitized, commercialized versions of Miami culture. Little Havana has become a tourist trap where nobody actually Cuban wants to spend time. The Domino's games are staged. The cigar shops overcharge. The restaurants serve bland approximations of real Cuban food at triple the price. Tourists seeking authentic cultural experiences feel cheated, sensing they're being shown a theme park version of something that once was real. Meanwhile, the neighborhoods where authentic Miami still thrives, where real culture and real community exist, remain invisible to most visitors. Tour guides don't take you there. Hotels don't recommend them. The tourism industrial complex has decided that authentic Miami is too messy, too unpredictable, too ethnic for the target demographic of wealthy visitors who prefer controlled, curated experiences. But here's the irony. Many tourists actually want the real thing. They want to taste food made by people who've been cooking it for generations. They want to hear music played by artists who live it, not perform it. They want conversations with locals who can tell them where Miami is really happening. Instead, they get Disney-fied versions, Instagram-ready but soul-empty. This cultural hollowing out extends to Miami's famous nightlife. The clubs that made Miami legendary, that created scenes that influenced global music and fashion, have priced out everyone but ultra-wealthy tourists and locals who treat clubs as investment vehicles. The energy has died. The creativity has fled. What remains is bottle service and velvet ropes and an overwhelming sense that you're being evaluated for your net worth, not welcomed for your presence. Tourists who remember Miami's nightlife from movies and music videos arrive expecting inclusive euphoria and instead encounter cold exclusion. The disappointment is profound because the marketing promised something Miami no longer delivers. The fifth reason tourists are fleeing Miami is environmental and existential. Climate change is destroying the very assets Miami built its tourism economy on. The beaches are eroding. Every hurricane season, more sand disappears into the ocean, and the expensive beach renourishment projects seem like futile attempts to hold back inevitable forces. The water itself is changed. Red tide blooms kill fish and create respiratory problems for beachgoers. The ocean temperature has risen to levels that feel more like bathwater than refreshing Atlantic coolness. Tourists who dreamed of crystal-clear turquoise water increasingly find murky brown-green seas, sometimes littered with dead fish and seaweed. The heat itself has become unbearable. Miami was always hot, but climate change has pushed temperatures into dangerous territory. Summer months now feature heat indices above 110 degrees Fahrenheit, making outdoor activity genuinely hazardous. Tourists collapse from heat exhaustion trying to walk down Ocean Drive. Families with children stay trapped in air-conditioned hotels, afraid to let kids play outside. The dream of endless outdoor paradise has become a fantasy, contradicted by physical reality. Visitors check weather forecasts and feel dread instead of anticipation. Hurricane anxiety looms over every trip. The hurricane season now extends longer and brings more intense storms. Tourists booking winter trips still worry, remembering how Hurricane Irma shut down the entire city, or how Hurricane Ian caused flooding even though its center stayed west of Miami. Every tropical system in the Atlantic triggers cancellation waves. Hotels and airlines profit from rescheduling fees, while tourists lose money and patience. The psychological toll of planning a vacation while wondering if a natural disaster will destroy it has made Miami feel unreliable, unsafe in a fundamental way that crime statistics can't capture. But Miami's leadership doesn't talk about these environmental realities honestly. They continue marketing an idealized version of the city that becomes less true every year. Tourists feel betrayed when reality doesn't match the glossy promotional videos. The cognitive dissonance is jarring. You're told you're in paradise while standing in flooded streets during sunny weather, while breathing air that stings from red tide, while sweating through clothes in heat that makes you dizzy. The environmental crisis isn't coming to Miami. It's already here, and tourists are among the first to recognize that the emperor has no clothes. The sixth reason tourists are abandoning Miami reveals the human cost of the city's transformation. The service culture has turned hostile. Customer service in Miami has become legendary for all the wrong reasons. Servers are rude or absent. Hotel staff act inconvenienced by guest requests. Retail employees display open contempt for tourists. The warmth and hospitality that once defined Miami's service industry has evaporated, replaced by transactional coldness or outright hostility. Tourists report feeling unwelcome, sensing that locals resent their presence rather than appreciate their business. Part of this traces to economic pressure on service workers themselves. Miami's cost of living has exploded while wages remain stagnant. People working in tourism can't afford to live near where they work. They commute hours each day, exhausted before their shifts begin. The tips they once relied on have been captured by automatic service charges that don't fully reach workers. The result is a burned-out, resentful workforce that views tourists not as guests to serve, but as components of the system exploiting them. That resentment leaks through in every interaction, poisoning the visitor experience. But there's more to it than economic frustration. Miami has developed a cultural arrogance, a sense that the city is so desirable that it doesn't need to try anymore. This attitude permeates everything from how restaurants treat reservations, to how clubs manage entry, to how hotels handle complaints. The message tourists receive constantly is, if you don't like it, leave, because 10 more people are waiting to take your place. Except, that's no longer true. The endless supply of tourists willing to tolerate bad treatment is finally running out. Word spreads fast in the internet age. One viral TikTok video showing a server throwing a drink at a customer, one YouTube review documenting a hotel's refusal to address mold problems, one Instagram post capturing the reality behind the marketing fantasy. These stories reach millions and change perceptions permanently. Compare Miami's service culture to competitor cities, and the difference shocks visitors. In Charleston, servers make you feel like family. In Nashville, hospitality is genuine. In New Orleans, even in touristy areas, there's warmth and humor, and a sense that locals want you to love their city. Miami offers none of this. Miami treats tourists like walking ATMs to be drained and discarded. Eventually, people stop volunteering for that treatment. They find other places, other beaches, other dreams, and Miami loses not just their current trip, but all future trips, and all the trips their friends might have taken if only they'd heard good things instead of warnings. The seventh and final reason tourists are fleeing Miami is perhaps the most damning. The city has lost its soul to greed and development. The neighborhoods that gave Miami its character are being demolished and replaced with luxury condos that sit empty. Investment vehicles for foreign capital rather than communities where people actually live. Historic buildings fall to make way for glass towers. Local businesses get priced out by landlords who can make more money leasing to chain stores or leaving spaces vacant for tax write-offs. The texture and specificity that made Miami interesting is being sanded away, replaced by generic luxury that could exist anywhere. Tourists notice. They walk through neighborhoods that feel empty despite all the construction. They see towers of dark windows, condos owned by people who visit twice a year. They eat at the same chain restaurants they have back home because local spots couldn't survive the rent increases. Miami is becoming a ghost town of wealth, a playground for the ultra-rich that has stopped being a real city where real people live real lives. The energy that attracted tourists in the first place, that sense of vibrant community and cultural exchange, is dying. What remains is a facade, a simulacrum of a great city, hollow and unsatisfying. The development boom was supposed to benefit everyone through trickle-down economics and increased tax revenue. Instead, it's created two Miamis. One for the wealthy who live in gated communities and ignore the city's problems, and one for everyone else who struggle to survive in a place that no longer wants them. Tourists arrive expecting to experience the second Miami, the real Miami, and instead get trapped in the first Miami, the fake one, and they leave disappointed and angry. They feel lied to, and they're right to feel that way. This is what breaks hearts about Miami's decline. It didn't have to happen this way. Other cities have managed growth without losing their souls. Other beach destinations have maintained reasonable prices without sacrificing quality. Other tourist economies have invested in infrastructure and safety and service culture because they understood that tourism requires trust, requires value, requires visitors to feel welcomed and valued. Miami chose differently. Miami chose short-term profit maximization over long-term sustainability. Miami chose exploitation over hospitality. And now Miami is learning that even paradise has limits, that even the most beautiful beaches can't compensate for everything else going wrong. The tourists who are fleeing aren't leaving because they hate Miami. They're leaving because they loved what Miami was supposed to be and can't forget what it's become. They're leaving because they feel betrayed, because the promise didn't match the reality, because they invested money and hope and excitement and got disappointment in return. They're leaving because Miami stopped caring about them, stopped valuing their presence, stopped treating them like guests, and started treating them like marks. And once that trust breaks, it's almost impossible to rebuild. Look at the review sites now. Look at the travel forums. Look at the social media posts. They tell the same story over and over. Miami isn't worth it anymore. The magic is gone. The prices are too high. The beaches are eroding. The traffic is unbearable. The crime is frightening. The service is terrible. The authenticity has vanished. Save your money. Go somewhere else. Anywhere else. These aren't reviews from people who had one bad experience. These are warnings from people who watched a city they loved transform into something unrecognizable and wanted to spare others the same disappointment. The truly tragic part is that Miami's leadership seems unable or unwilling to acknowledge these problems honestly. They point to statistics that show tourism numbers remaining strong, ignoring that those numbers mask a troubling trend. First-time visitors arrive once and never return, while repeat visitors who used to come annually have stopped coming at all. The tourism economy is being sustained by a constant churn of new visitors who don't yet know to stay away, but that well will eventually run dry. Word of mouth matters. Reputation matters. Trust matters. And Miami is losing all three. Can Miami recover? The honest answer is maybe, but only if the city makes fundamental changes. Only if it chooses long-term sustainability over short-term profit. Only if it invests in infrastructure and safety and service training. Only if it controls predatory pricing and exploitation. Only if it protects authentic neighborhoods and culture instead of bulldozing them for luxury developments. Only if it addresses climate change seriously instead of pretending the problems don't exist. Only if it starts treating tourists like valued guests again instead of walking wallets. These changes require political will, financial investment, and cultural shifts that seem unlikely given Miami's current trajectory. More likely, Miami will continue down its current path until the tourism economy collapses entirely or transforms into something unrecognizable. The city will become exclusively a playground for billionaires, with tourism infrastructure serving only the ultra-wealthy who can afford five-star everything and private security. The middle-class family vacation to Miami will become a relic of the past, a memory of a time when paradise was accessible to ordinary people. And maybe that's what Miami wants. Maybe the city has decided that exclusivity is more profitable than inclusivity, that serving the few matters more than welcoming the many. But something will be lost in that transformation. Something important about the American dream, about the promise that beauty and adventure and paradise are available to everyone willing to work hard and save up. Miami was supposed to be proof that glamour wasn't just for the elite, that anyone could walk down Ocean Drive and feel like a star, that paradise existed and you could visit it, could taste it, could carry that memory home and let it sustain you through cold winters and hard times. That dream is dying in Miami, killed by greed and indifference and the kind of short-term thinking that destroys everything it touches. The tourists who are fleeing Miami aren't just leaving a city. They're leaving behind a dream that died. They're mourning something lost, something that can't be recovered or purchased at any price. They're recognizing that sometimes things break in ways that can't be fixed, that sometimes places change so fundamentally that they're no longer worth visiting, worth remembering, worth loving. And that recognition breaks hearts, because Miami was supposed to be forever, was supposed to be the place that never changed, never disappointed, never betrayed. Empty tables line Ocean Drive now. Restaurants that used to turn away customers, now desperate for anyone to sit down. Empty beach chairs stretch for miles. Rental companies struggling to cover costs. Empty hotel rooms offer deep discounts that still can't attract enough visitors. Empty streets that used to pulse with energy now feel hollow, watched over by empty condo towers where nobody lives. Empty dreams, empty promises, empty paradise. Maybe there's still hope. Maybe Miami will wake up and remember what made it special, what attracted millions of visitors year after year, what created the magic that everyone is now mourning. Maybe the city will choose differently, will invest in becoming the place it claims to be instead of the money extraction machine it's become. Maybe tourists will return, not because marketing convinced them, but because reality earned their trust back. Maybe Miami can be redeemed. But that redemption requires something Miami hasn't shown lately. Humility. The humility to admit mistakes. The humility to listen to criticism. The humility to understand that paradise isn't a permanent state. That magic requires maintenance. That dreams die when nobody tends them. The humility to recognize that tourists are human beings, deserving respect, not just revenue streams to be optimized. The humility to remember that great cities are built on trust, on value, on keeping promises instead of breaking them. Until that happens, until Miami chooses redemption over exploitation, tourists will keep fleeing. They'll find other beaches, other cities, other dreams. They'll spend their money in places that value them, that welcome them, that deliver on promises instead of breaking hearts. They'll warn their friends and family. They'll share their stories online. They'll remember Miami not as paradise found, but as paradise lost. And slowly, inexorably, Miami will empty out. A cautionary tale about what happens when greed kills magic, when exploitation destroys trust, when a city forgets why anyone loved it in the first place. It's time we remember what Miami used to mean. It's time we acknowledge what it's become. And it's time we decide whether we're okay with paradise dying, or whether we still believe that some places, some dreams, some promises are worth fighting for. Because Miami is still there, still beautiful in the early morning light, still magical if you know where to look. But the window is closing, the tourists are fleeing, and soon, if nothing changes, it might be too late to save what made Miami matter. If you've felt this change too, if you remember what Miami used to be, share your story. And if this opened your eyes, stay tuned, because the next city might already be heading down the same path, and you'll want to know before it's too late.